Overtraining can cause you to be ravenously hungry or kind of feel like you don't want to eat.
That's a wide spectrum.
I've never felt like I didn't want to eat, Nick.
Okay.
I've been overtrained in my life and I feel like I'm just ravenous. Because I've dug such a deep hole that my body is asking me for nutrition and calories to recover from that.
And obviously, like we said earlier, keeping all that in mind on top of how much other stress is in your life, right? So if it's a time of increased stress at work, increased stress with family matters, increased stress anywhere else, be mindful that all of that adds on and creates that mountain of problem that you're having, and you could be heading down the road towards overtraining and putting yourself into a position where your body is just going to start to shut down. You know, Mike, a lot of people are very interested in looking good and feeling good for the summertime, and they might have just been reminded because the weather got nice that they should probably get their act into gear, you know? But sometimes people can work too hard at it, and there is a point of diminishing return. People can overtrain, and this is a big problem because sometimes it's hard to tell that it's happening, but it can really impact the overall results and the way you feel.
Sure. It can affect your hormones big time. Oh, yeah. So a lot of times people will come to me, Nick, especially men that are overreaching, because there's overreaching. Overreaching starts before overtraining. And they'll come in with a list of all their exercises and sets and reps and the diet they've gone on. And we'll get into a little bit of the diet and how that can contribute to overtraining. And these guys will have rock bottom testosterone of like an 80, 90-year-old man because they're suppressing the hormones through overtraining.
Huh. So normal training and fatigue is like a battery that's run out of juice. You can go to sleep, plug it in, recharge it, you wake up the next day, you're feeling okay. But once you've overtrained and once you've gotten to that point where you're just totally fatigued, it's like the battery is broken, because even that night of restful sleep is not going to bring you back that next day feeling rejuvenated, feeling like you're ready to attack that day, do a good workout, get the full day in at work, you know, hang out with your family, do all the things that make for a high quality of life.
Absolutely. And for all our hardcore fitness enthusiasts, a lot of times when these people are not feeling well, Nick, they start to like do more. They actually go the other way. They say, I'm not feeling well. Oh, it must be something that I'm not putting into my diet. Or maybe I need to remove this food group. And they start to actually train more, which makes the problem worse. And they dig themselves a deeper ditch, essentially, in the recovery system.
Now, there is something called overtraining syndrome, right?
That's correct.
And what is that? Can you explain that to the audience?
So I don't know if there's not a test per se for overtraining. So it's just a term that somebody has brought up. However, Nick, so I don't forget about, let's talk about two markers in blood. If somebody talks to their doctor and they suggest that maybe they're not feeling well or they're feeling run down, obviously they can check their hormones. Slow thyroid, again, always say this, but we should do a video on that. But slow thyroid can make somebody feel sluggish. But if they're concerned that they're overtrained, Nick, they can look for a marker in the blood. And sometimes they'll test with a statin drug, because this can be elevated through statin drugs. It's called CPK or creatine kinase. Okay. Now that would show muscle destruction, that the muscles are being broken down faster than they can recover.
Okay. Now, isn't CRP also a marker that they can look for in blood?
That's right. We just went over your blood before. Nick just got blood work and we went over some of his blood. Beautiful job, by the way, Nick.
Okay.
You know, CRP. Now you have what's called high sensitive CRP, and that's going to be more to see if your cardiac muscles are inflamed. But somebody can just get a straight CRP, which is C-reactive protein, okay? And that shows a systemic marker of what the inflammation in your body is. Now, if you're sick, if you just had bad food, this could be elevated if you had bronchitis or strep throat or a cold, this can go up. But if you go in and everything else feels normal, you're not under the weather, and you're just feeling like maybe I'm overtrained, CRP, creatine kinase, those two markers, those are elevated, and you're not feeling well, then you're probably more than likely doing more training than your body can handle at this given time. Or another thing, if you're being too aggressive in your calorie restriction, that can actually cause overtraining as a byproduct of not taking enough recovery nutrition and fuel to facilitate the repair process and to fuel that training. So you say, is it the training or is it the diet? Well, it could be both in this situation.
Overtraining is mimicking your body's like stress response, right? Because your body doesn't know the difference between financial stress, relationship problems, all the things that can be causing you headaches. And then on top of that, you're training and your body just kind of lumps that all into one big pile and it overloads it, right? Now, some people, when they're stressed, they want to work out harder because there is a little bit of stress reduction with the workout if done properly and if you give yourself enough time to recover, right?
Yes. So it's called hormesis or a hormetic effect. So remember, I don't know if people even do these anymore, Nick, but are people doing allergy shots anymore?
I don't know.
Yeah, but remember when we were younger, people used to go for allergy shots.
Yeah.
And now what they're doing is they're saying, hey, Nick's allergic to cats, house dust, and mold. And what they were doing is giving you little boluses, little mini boluses or microdosing of those allergens.
Mhm.
And over time, your body is building up a resistance to those allergies.
Right.
When you exercise, you're putting little microtraumas, which are little tears in the muscle, which is a stress to your point, Nick, and your body is adapting to that stress, recuperating and turning over new muscle tissue. But from the minute you get up in the morning, Nick, you're about to take a bunch of stress on, right? It's going to be the stress that your kid didn't finish their homework last night and he didn't tell you about it.
Sure.
And then you walked out and you had a flat tire on your car.
Right.
And then you hit traffic to come over to do the LynchFit podcast. And then you went and did the exercise. And then your wife yelled at you because she saw our last video that you were putting fucking beef tallow in your cooking. And she said, Mike told you not to do that. And she like gets mad at you. And then you're like, I just can't take care of all this stress. So stress, to your point, Nick, yes, your body doesn't know. It just knows stress and stress and stress and stress. The name of the game is to give yourself, in regards to training, just enough stress to get that hormetic effect. A little stress so it could get bigger and stronger,
Okay.
faster, and recuperate.
And hopefully
Stress,
help you de-stress a little bit, right?
Correct.
Hopefully, because a good workout, a good strength training workout can help wipe away all the BS that happened during the day, that you were late to work, that your boss just gave you twice as much responsibilities that you had, but not any more pay, right? These are things that all add to that stress. And you want to go work out to kind of relieve some of that stress. So hopefully it's not creating more stress for people and putting them in a heightened state of anxiety.
Yes, that's the hormetic effect. It's just getting that stress, and your body adapts to that stress by getting stronger, faster, building the immune system. But it's dose dependent.
Okay. What are some telltale signs that people should look for so that they can decide if they're overtraining, if they're putting too much into their workouts, if they're stressing their body too much and not giving themselves time to recover?
Okay. Some of the low-hanging fruit is going to be muscles that don't seem to recover or stay sore for days upon days. And just like if you did your legs, Nick, on Monday and they're still sore to touch by Friday, that could be a sign that you either overdid it or your body is just not recuperating. It's not turning over that tissue.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, they still feel them kind of flat and they don't have a lot of zest to them. Screwed sleep.
Now, there's a lot of reasons why your sleep can be screwed, but that's one of them,
Yes,
right?
but it's one of them. Now, this one's going to sound, I love these commercials when they say, could cause constipation, could cause diarrhea, right? With medications.
Sure.
But overtraining can cause you to be ravenously hungry or kind of feel like you don't want to eat.
Oof, that's a wide spectrum.
I've never felt like I didn't want to eat. Nick.
Okay.
I've been overtrained in my life, and I feel like I'm just ravenous. Because I've dug such a deep hole that my body is asking me for nutrition and calories to recover from that. So screwed sleep, no hunger or toxic hunger, or you're just feeling like you can never get satisfied. Feeling really like you have no fuse, Nick. Like as far as
like you're just quick to blow up at people.
Yes, the littlest things piss you off where normally, why is this bothering me? Low sex drive. For the men out there, lack of erection or erection that is not strong. A woman, I don't think women, because women deal with the drying of the vaginal area. I don't think that that's a sign of, but it could be. But definitely men. Now, it's not really an erection problem. It's a low testosterone problem. So now women can suffer from low testosterone as well. But does that cause vaginal dryness? I don't know. If I said it did, I would. But it makes sense that it could potentially lower that moisture in a woman. But men definitely could have complete abandonment of being able to get an erection, or it's just kind of like it gets there, but then it fades out. Or they just kind of like, yeah, I could have sex or I could not have sex. I really don't care. Joints that kind of ache you for no reason. Stuff. These are like the big telltale signs. Or actually, Nick, you don't want, believe it or not, that you don't want to train. You're somebody who likes to train, and out of nowhere, you're just like, I don't feel like working out. That's another sign.
One of the scary parts about overtraining is that it is not a quick recovery. If you get your body into this situation, this is 6 to 12 months to recover from fully. That is a long time, and that can be very difficult to try to fix for that long of a period of time, right? After a month or two, you're just saying to yourself, God, what is going on? Why isn't this changing? Why aren't I feeling better? But it's a long road to recovery if you push yourself to this point.
Yeah, and another one that I forgot is depression. So, it can, and again, it's a chicken and egg situation, but if you're feeling like you're typically a happy person and you have all these other signs, but then you're saying, am I depressed? If somebody says to themselves, could I be depressed? More than likely they are either depressed or they're headed towards that. So, now, for somebody that loves to exercise, to take 6 months off from training or a great time, a block away from training, it's hard. It's hard psychologically, and then they can get out of shape. A lot of bad things can happen. So really what somebody wants to do is don't abandon the exercise, because like you can get online and read these articles on how to mitigate or overcome overtraining, and they'll say, oh, you need to stop training for weeks or months. And I think that has its own set of problems. So basically what you can do is lower the volume of training. Maybe if you're strength training 4 times a day, maybe you go to 3 or 2
A day? A week?
a week. Did I say a day? I'm sorry. If you're
Maybe that's good for Mike Lynch,
no,
but
no,
not
I've
for the
never
rest
done
of
that
us.
actually, but there are people, athletes and stuff like that, that do 2 or 3 times a day and stuff like that. But if you're somebody who is strength training, let's say 3 to 4 times a week, maybe you pull it back to 2 or 3. And if you're doing high intensity interval training for your cardio, maybe you just do an easy walk where your heart rate's between 100 and 120 beats per minute.
Sure.
And you just let your body cool off. And in a week or 2, you'll feel much better. And then you can go back into it. Don't go right back to what you're doing that got you into the mess, but it doesn't need to be this whole abstaining from training completely.
Unless you wait too long, in which case you may have to do that.
Right. Yeah, and you don't want to get to that point. And sometimes it's not the training itself, it's the person being over enthusiastic about their nutrition. And I got to tell you something, Nick. I just thought of something as you brought this up. Ozempic. I bet you for the people that are taking Ozempic, that are big exercise people, they're going to run into massive overtraining.
Because they're not taking in enough
Because
calories?
they're not hungry. Food is fuel. Listen, this is not an Ozempic video, but Ozempic already is starting to show really bad signs. But I didn't even think about that. When people ask my opinion about what I think about it, I say, oh, I think, this could be a problem and this can be a problem. I never even thought about it. Ozempic, for the people that are exercising, could really lend a hand to massive overtraining because they're not taking in the energy that they need and the nutrition because they're not hungry. They're dulling that response in their body. They're training. And here's the thing, just thinking out loud, because they're losing weight, when people lose weight initially, they get more energy. They feel better. They're losing a bunch of slop and shit. So they start to move more. They might clean their house. They might start to wash their car or have more sex or whatever. But they still have that suppression of that hunger. They have less raw material coming in, protein, fats, and carbohydrates, to facilitate the recovery from the training. So, wow, I didn't even think about that until now. Yeah. So you have to look at the training, and then you have to look at the calories that are coming in to fuel the workouts, Nick, and help you recover and recycle proteins, turn over muscle tissue so you can exercise the next day.
And obviously, like we said earlier, keeping all that in mind on top of how much other stress is in your life, right? So if it's a time of increased stress at work, increased stress with family matters, increased stress anywhere else, be mindful that all of that adds on and creates that mountain of problem that you're having. And you could be heading down the road towards overtraining and putting yourself into a position where your body is just going to start to shut down.
Yeah. Now, listen, I'm a tough love guy, as you know, Nick, right? So you think about it, the best way we can explain it to the viewers is like a waste paper basket, right? Like that little basket that you have next to your desk. And you crumple up a ball of paper and throw it in. That's your mom yelling at you.
Sure.
Then you crumple another ball, and then there's a flat tire. And your body is like a basket, and it's stress and a little stress. And training, especially if you're training hard, that's a big ball. That's like a couple of papers thrown in there. And it just goes up and then it spills over.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we ignore the signs, especially if we're really driven people. So you have to think about that. You have to, at some point, recover would be emptying the basket out. You can't just keep on dumping little papers in there. At some point, you gotta stop and throw it out. And that's your recovery and your nutrition and your days off, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Your days off. Because I always say this, Nick, fitness is like money. If I give you $100,000, Nick, like, all right, great, $100,000. But then inflation and your kid wants, your wife wants something and you want to get something. And you're like, you know what, Lynch? I want 150. And then 150 is good for a while. And then you're like, you know what? If I could just make 200,000. And then you want to, and then the story keeps on going on. And nutrition and fitness is like that. Most people that start to exercise later in life, they feel like total dog shit. And now they start to listen to LynchFit podcasts. They're listening to Nick and Mike Lynch, and they're feeling better. And then they add a day, and then they take out a little processed carbohydrates, and it all is a form of stress because they want to feel fitter. But in the meantime, sometimes they overdo things and they set themselves back. So it's really a little bit of a tightrope to walk. We're not here to hold people's hand and coddle people. We want them to train hard. We want them to be strict in their nutrition most of the time, but we want them to also be as mindful and as strict with their recovery and their days off, whether that's a massage and sauna, or I can't do the ice thing, Nick. I can't do the ice thing. But the cold immersion, whatever it is, you have to look at that as a wheel of fitness And recovery and rest time has to be put in there, just like your nutrition and your training and your tracking devices and logging your food. It all has to be a piece of the puzzle.
Right. Just like you got to work out your core muscles to help your back, you got to recover to make sure your workouts are going to be good.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about that recovery. And you just mentioned a couple things, but what are some things people can do during the week to make sure that they're getting that proper recovery time?
Right. Well, you said it best, Nick, and you talk about this all the time. Number one, sleep. Now, we know, and we done videos on sleep, I think. I'm a shit sleeper. But thank God, most of the time, I don't feel overtrained. My testosterone is great. But I can imagine how better I could be, Mike Lynch could be, if I was somebody who slept well.
Okay.
But number one is going to be that
consistent sleep schedule, getting 7 to 8 hours a night.
And even upward to 9 in some hard trained individuals. Yeah. They used to say 7 to 8, and they said if you train real hard to tack an hour on. Now, if you have that time and you have that ability, up to 9 hours. Now, if you go past that, there's some literature to show that could actually be detrimental to health going past 9 hours. But number one is going to be good quality, uninterrupted sleep. Then we have things like, again, sauna. I find personally sauna stresses me out, Nick. I don't like it. I can't get used to it. And I can white knuckle anything. I think that my sauna, although if you stay in the sauna, because I have a barrel sauna, if I stay in there too long, that could actually be a little bit stressful. But I find it to be very soothing up until about 20, 25 minutes. Foam rolling, not done in excessive amounts. Yoga for some people.
I was going to ask, would you consider yoga a recovery?
You know, I'm not a big yoga person, but I think that yoga can be done wrong, Nick. And if it's the relaxing, calming kind of yoga, absolutely. But I think, and
so
again,
there's like power yoga,
yeah,
then there's just like yoga for
yeah,
like breathing techniques and different things like that.
And you know, they have these super, super hot yoga classes where you're sweating like, you know, like bullets. I think that might be stressful.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying it's not good and it couldn't
But
be.
it's not a recovery.
Right. Yeah, it could be. It sounds like it could be very detoxing, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if that would be the yoga class I would recommend to a client for recovery, like you said.
Meditation?
Meditation. Yeah. I tried that. I was really bad at that as well. Meditation.
Well, it's hard. I mean, meditation is not something that you just start one day and you're good at.
Yeah.
Like any skill, it takes a long time, but it can be very good to quiet the mind.
Right. Walking. Walking is a great form of cardio. Walking where you can have a conversation with someone without being out of breath. Walking is a great form of cardiovascular. You burn body fat, but it's low intensity enough, Nick, where the central nervous system is not affected, and it can aid in recovery, but give you fat burning effects. Walking is wonderful. It can give you fat burning. It can give you cardiovascular benefit. It can give you time with loved ones.
Yeah.
And help with recovery. Just give you enough blood flow to aid in the recovery. And one thing to mention, Nick, is exercises that are touted to be the best, which are, if they're performed right, the deadlift and the squat and the cousins of those, like lunges and overhead presses. These exercises, when performed properly, are phenomenal. They're phenomenal for bone density, muscle mass, hormone output. However, they're very taxing to the central nervous system. So if I do a squat where a bar's on my back and I'm squatting 250 pounds, it's affecting my body systemically. Where if I do a bicep curl, doesn't mean I can't do a hard set of bicep curls, but it's very localized.
Sure.
It's not going to, it's not going to like trash me. So when you do an exercise program, you want to put, as long as orthopedically you can handle these squats and deadlifts and stuff like that and heavy leg presses, you want to try to put them in, but doing too much of those can actually lead to a systemic fatigue, which can lend its hand to overtraining.
Huh.
So they are the bread and butter of our fitness programs, Nick, that we advocate. But when they are overdone or comprise, there has to be other stuff that's in there. Okay. And just doing those best exercises in excess can lead to overtraining.
So for people who are stressed out, who are dealing with a lot of other things going on in their life, and they do want to add strength training and cardio in, is there a rule of thumb? Are we saying, 2 to 3 workout sessions a week with a day in between? Is that a safe place to be? How much recovery do we want to put in there if we're working out 90 to 120 minutes a week? Is it dependent on the person?
That's a hard question to answer, and because there's going to be recovery systems in the human body are going to be individual, right? And then we have age, we have work schedules, we have all these things. But I would say for the average person that just has real obligations in life, maybe have family, pets, a house, an occupation.
Sure.
That you want to be strength training and doing cardio in a manner that you feel that you can recover from. And you can go as little as 2 days of strength training and 2 days of cardio for a total of 4 days. And you can go all the way up to 6 days a week, where it's a shakeout of 3 days of strength training and 3 days of cardio. Or maybe you're somebody who wants to put on more muscle, you're a little skinny, it's 4 days of strength training and 2 days of cardio. There really is not one size fits all. And it's also going to be dependent on the time of year. And, if you have a kind of occupation that sometimes it's really crazy, like landscapers, right? Like I was a landscaper before I was a trainer. The spring and the fall were crazy because we had cleanups and the startups and the blowouts of the closeouts at the end, and then the maintenance. But in the wintertime, unless it snowed, I wasn't doing anything for 2 or 3 months. And then my training volume would go up. So I would say that on the high end, most people should at least take 1 day away from the gym, exercise. Doesn't mean that you can't be active and go play golf or tennis or have extra sex or go in the sauna. But on that high end, Nick, it's going to be 6 days. And I think that most people want to exercise at least 3 days a week. And how you shake that up between strength training and cardio and then do the extras like your yoga or your Pilates or whatever, I think that's going to be. But to give a blanketed suggestion,
case by case.
Yeah, it's going to be case by
Now,
case.
is it easier to overtrain if you're out of shape? So is this something that people who are just starting their journey should be looking out for?
That's a great question, Nick. I'm going to say no. It's probably harder for you to overtrain if you're somebody.
Because you have more reserves?
Yeah, because you've been so sedentary, and it doesn't mean that you can't have outside stress.
Of course.
But yeah, your muscles haven't been. Now, I would say this: if you're new to the game, your body can. That's a very tricky question that you just asked me, Nick. Because if you're new to the game and you don't have training experience, then the volume, small amounts of volume of stress through exercise is going to create a lot of inroads in that muscle and turn over new tissue and give you the exercise effect. But these people are coming from sedentary, posh lives, so to say.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably much easier for someone that has been training for a while and is getting older, because we're all getting older, to overtrain than somebody who's sedentary. That was a great question that no one has ever asked me. You're very thought-provoking questions sometimes, Nick.
Well, I'm just dumb enough to ask the smart questions, right? But it's interesting because throughout my life I've dipped in and dipped out of strength training. Currently, I've been
Well,
working out
that's
for the
never going to happen again.
No, of course not. Now that we're doing this podcast, but you know, it is something I was thinking about when we were prepping for this, whether it was easier or harder based on how long you've been working out for, you know, how
Yeah,
active you are.
that's a great question. I'm going to say that it's easier for people that train on a regular basis to get overtrained.
Of course, we don't want to tell people not to train hard, right? Training hard is a piece of this. And we're not saying to give yourself the pass. Oh, you worked out 2 days last month. You're good. Take a break.
Well, overtrained, Nick.
Yeah.
Nick and Mike sitting over, you know.
But that's not to minimize that some people are legitimately going through this and they might not even realize it.
Right.
Right. So that's something that people need to keep in mind and be honest with themselves and say, am I doing too much or am I just being lazy?
Right. And listen, I'm gonna help out the trainers out there, because there's a lot of trainers out there, Nick. They may be new to the game, and they're hungry to build up a clientele. You also have to know sometimes when somebody's going through something and where you need to throttle back. Now, I have a reputation of being a hard trainer. I'm a tough love guy. I'm very big into conditioning. Like, I've had Marines and SWAT team people that say that my training is harder than they even did in boot camp. Okay. But just for the sake of telling a story, I just had a client that's been with me for a long time, and he ultimately lost his daughter, and she battled cancer. It was a 2-year battle. And this guy is a hardworking guy, and he likes to be beat up to a certain degree. And there was some late nights back and forth to the hospital and stuff. And this guy, kudos to him, he showed up. I think it was his outlet, you know? And I had to know when to push and when to throttle back, you know? And, you know, he's paying me money, so he wants a great service. He wants a great workout. But there was times where this guy would walk in and he would only have 2-3 hours sleep because he was in the hospital. And if I gave him a hard workout, I probably would have got him sick or threw him into a deeper depression than he may have been in. I'm not saying he was depressed, but I'm sure he was at some point, or is, or whatever. And you really gotta, whether you're training yourself or you're a trainer, you really gotta know when to throttle in and throttle back. And, you know, it's called periodization, Nick. You have these highs and lows of training. And sometimes if you're my client, Nick, and I say, all right, and you're coming to me 5 days a week. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I train Nick hard, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays are a back off day. Well, if I see, and I have a great day on Wednesday with you, and then you walk in Tuesday and it's a throttle down day, but you walk in like, good morning, Mike. And I see that you're full of, like, you look great, you look fresh, and I may make the decision to be like, you know what? I'm not going to throttle down today. I'm instinctive, the key word with my training. And then I push you. And then now on Friday, if I see you walk in and you look a little flat, then if I warm you up and I see that you're not really, you know, you look a little, then that's my throttle down day. And somebody needs to do this for themselves. You can have on paper, I like to plan, but realize that the plan needs to change at times. You need to listen to your body. And sometimes you can be getting to the gym and feel like, oh, but 5 minutes, 10 minutes into it, you listen to the LynchFit podcast, a good song comes on, and then boom, you're into it. You need to listen to your body. So just don't fight the feeling. A lot of times our bodies will let us know that whether we're ready to push the pedal harder or back off. And that's a key thing that people need to think about when avoiding overtraining.
Right.
You can have a plan. You can listen to a podcast. You can listen to 10 experts, but you need to listen to the signs of overtraining, and don't pussyfoot yourself into not getting in shape because you're scared of overtraining. It's a little bit of a tightrope to walk, and it will change from week to week and month to month.
I do think that's a good takeaway. We are nearing the end of this episode, but I want people to remember that during periods of high stress in their life, that is not usually the time to push harder than you ever have.
No.
You can keep working out, but listen to your body, like you said, and really pay attention to what your body is saying. And it might be time to pull back just a little bit to give your body just enough time to recover from the stress that's already coming in from all the other angles.
Everything's got an opposing side to it, right, Nick? The other thing is, let's say me and you got into a brawl today and it put you in a shit mood. And now you're driving back to your house, that for the viewers, it's about an hour from here, and you hit 2 hours of traffic. And you're just hot, man. You're like cranky bastard. And you may now fight with your wife or your son because they didn't do anything wrong, but your fuse is short.
Yeah.
Where if you go home and crank out a 30-minute workout and you just leave it all on the gym floor, it's a weird thing where you let it all out. Mike pissed you off, the traffic pissed you off, but now you just did a clobbering workout and now you let all that stress out. And now when they come in, you're like, hey guys. And now where you may have blew up with something stupid, you got de-stressed by doing a form of stress. It's a very tricky thing.
Yeah.
You see how that works?
Yeah.
So sometimes, but the overtraining thing, Nick, is more of a chronic situation.
Right.
So sometimes if you're in a bad place, a hard workout, a hard cardio workout can be the very thing to de-stress you, where the rest of your life is smooth sailing, where you don't say something to your wife and she's like, why is Nick such a I know
Everyone says that.
welcome to the Lynch house, bro. For every one time they say it to you, they say it in fact 50 times to me, okay? So it's a kind of thing you really have to take it. You look for the signs, and then you become your own best advocate. I don't care what your trainer or your nutritionist says, and you'll know. You'll know the signs. Be like, oh, all right, my blood work came back. My CPK, my creatine kinase is a little, not out of range, but it's trending high. This elbow it's not, I'm icing it, it's not getting better. I want Doritos 3 times a week, and why I don't normally want shit food like that. Maybe I need to scale it back.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't do more. Maybe I should listen to the LynchFit podcast, listen to Nitro Nick, and scale it back. Take a couple of days.
Now, people need to also remember, recovery is when the gains happen.
That's right.
Right?
100%.
So it's important, if you're trying to build muscle, recovery is a big piece of that equation.
And women out there, you want to build muscle? Everybody wants to build muscle? Yes, Nick. The stress is the gym time. It's the breakdown of the muscle. It's the hard cardio. It's when you go home, eat nutrition, rest, recover. That's where the good stuff happens.
Right.
It feels good in the gym if you're somebody that likes to work out. But again, it's a form of stress. It's a paper in that paper basket that we talked about.
And people need to remember the warning signs. If you're waking up tired, if your immune system is low, if you're getting sick all the time, if you have a short fuse, right? These are things to look out for. I'm sure there's a couple others that I forgot, but you just hit us with a couple more of the early warning signs that we're looking for.
Yeah. So if your white cell or your red blood cell counts are out on blood work, or your CPK or your creatine kinase, if you're, like you're saying, Nick, if you're having disrupted sleep, okay, obviously there's a lot of things that create that, but sore joints, muscles that don't recover, the absence of hunger or chronic hunger, the thought that I just don't want to train when you're somebody that kind of looks forward to it. Some people love to train.
Yeah.
And if you're going through that, it's probably more than likely that you're headed towards either what's called overreaching, which is the beginning stage of overtraining. Just scale back.
Yeah,
just scale back. Nothing's going to happen. And you'll probably, the only thing that will probably happen if people scale back, Nick, is they're going to get a phenomenal workout when they go back to training.
Now, hopefully people do need to consider this because it means they are working out. It means they have a lot going on in their life. Now, I hope that most of that stress is not coming from their family and their boss and their job and all that other stuff. But, you know, they say these are good problems to have. If you're working out too much, that's a good problem to have. You can scale that back.
Right.
Better than not working out at all right now, because then you got a tough hill to climb. But think about, I'm hoping that our audience can really think about what they're doing with their week. And if they are working out 5, 6, 7 days a week, watch out for this overtraining because it can be a real problem for people.
Absolutely. And, we didn't talk about, Nick, and we'll do another video on this, is what's the next step after overtraining? Injuries.
Right.
And that you don't want to be laid up with a surgery or a knee replacement and all these things. So it's kind of like overreaching, Nick, overtraining, and then what that's going to come along with that, whether it's a torn ACL or torn rotator cuff or a bad back or complete burnout emotionally and a total avoidance of exercise. Somebody can get so emotionally burnt out, they'll be like, just give up.
I'm done.
I have friends that used to be diehard workout guys and they don't train anymore and their health is not particularly well and they're not going to the beach, that's for sure. So there's a lot of problems that are above and beyond overtraining. So things to just to think about, really concern yourself with, but still fucking train hard at the same time.
But knowing when to ease off on the gas is another tool in your toolkit, right? It's the strength training, it's the cardio, it's the diet, and it's knowing when to recover, knowing when to pull back a little bit, paying attention, like you said, paying attention to yourself, pay attention to your body. Your body will start to tell you if you're going too hard.
Right. Look, man, you keep on bringing up a lot of things in my head. I know the internet is a fun place to go for people in social media, but educate yourself, listen to this podcast, listen to credible people that don't have anything to sell, people that do this for a living, exercise physiologists and scientists, because if you're 40 years old, if you're 50 years old, stop listening to the 20-year-old handsome guy that could be enhanced with steroids, let's be honest.
Sure.
Right? And following what they're doing. So that's another thing where people really could run into a problem where they start to, because the internet is loaded with that, you start to compare yourself to other people. And if you're comparing yourself to young people, a young 30-year-old guy or girl, and you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and a lot of these people, unfortunately, especially these days, they're enhanced with chemicals, and their recovery is like lightning, and that can lead you down a place of, I didn't even think about that, a real place of overtraining. And again, if you're that type of person that's being motivated by those people, more than likely, Nick, until the wheels fall off the bus, they're going to do more, not less.
Yeah.
They're going to do more because you got these people saying, yeah, I train 2 days a week and I do 500 push-ups a day. All these crazy moronic things that are out there. And this can really lead somebody down to disordered eating and disordered training.
And we don't want that.
No way.
Well, that's all I got. Any last word that you want to leave people with? I feel like that last thing you said was pretty important.
No, I think that fitness is something that you want to do for a long period of time, Nick. We want, as Nick says now, his new term, 101, we want you to live to 101, free of injuries to the best of your ability. And that's going to be great quality cardio, great quality strength training with a good balanced diet in the appropriate amounts with lots of rest and recovery. And that is the golden ticket, Nick. That is the golden ticket.
Well, you now have the golden ticket, so you're welcome. Remember to comment, share the video. I had a great time doing this episode with Mike. Thank you very much, Mike, for all that great information. And hopefully you did as well. So please tell somebody about the podcast if you liked what you heard today. Word of mouth is a great way for podcasts to start to gain traction. And that's all I got.
Yep. Thank you, Nick. And thank you, guys. And we'll see you in the next video, right, Nick?
We definitely will.
We'll see you guys. Bye-bye. Please hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any content in the future.